Today's question is, you've spoken about hoarding, but what about compulsive Spartanism? How is that different from minimalism? Well, they sound the same, I suppose. Compulsive Spartanism and minimalism both involve reducing material possessions, don't they? But that's where the similarity ends, because they come from different places psychologically and have different impacts on your well-being. Compulsive Spartanism is often driven by underlying emotional or psychological issues, such as anxiety or fear or the need for control. And this act of purging possessions serves as a coping mechanism for that. And, the behavior is often accompanied by emotional distress. And of course, it can hugely negatively impact the quality of life of the person suffering from it. And the focus is not so much on the end state of having fewer items, but rather on the act of purging itself, because of its obsessive nature and its linked to underlying psychological issues. Treatment generally has to be done. Things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or other forms of psychological intervention. Now, on the other hand, minimalism is generally a conscious lifestyle choice. Now, it may surprise you to know that I am not a minimalist. I can think of nothing worse, to be quite honest, than being in a huge room with just one white chair in the corner. But that's driven by a desire for simplicity and freedom, focus on experiences over material possessions. And people who choose minimalism often, they often feel relief and happiness because, again, they say their life is unencumbered by unnecessary possessions. The aim is, I suppose, to improve quality of life. And minimalists do say that it reduces stress and makes room for meaningful relationships. I'm not sure how that works, but I suppose it must work for some people. Now, unlike compulsive Spartanism, the focus in minimalism is on the end state, a life where every item has a purpose or brings joy. I have friends who are minimalists, and they'll say things like, oh, does this pen bring you joy? Darling, yes, that pen was £5,000, and you're damn right it brings me joy. Oh, but do you need it? You have more than one. Yeah, I need it. Minimalism often involves self-help, doesn't it? There's actually an episode on Family Guy where Lois gets into minimalism and starts throwing everything out, including Peter and the family, because it didn't bring her joy. It was actually quite funny. But it's not generally considered a condition that requires psychological treatment. So whilst, both involve a reduction in material possessions, compulsive Spartanism is seen often as a maladaptive behavior that requires treatment, whereas minimalism is viewed as a positive life choice. So I suppose that that should answer your question.